Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp, and today's lesson is going to be on the Kabbalah. This video is all about Ain Soph, and Ain Soph Aur. Now there's a lot of different things that have been written about these three veils of negative existence by different authors. Some of them say similar things, but other things are just completely different between authors. So there's a lot of confusion in this area and a lot of difficulty in people explaining this concept of the three veils of negative existence. And I think a part of that is just the fact that it's such an abstract and difficult to describe set of ideas. We're talking about not even a level of existence, a level beyond existence, a level of pre-existence, you might say, which is very difficult to explain using the language that we're familiar with, because we don't actually have concepts for what we're describing. But basically what we're doing with the veils of negative existence is we're going back to the beginning of all creation, the beginning of everything, and then going past even that to what came before the beginning, so to speak. And that is what the Kabbalah tries to explain with the concept of the three veils of negative existence. So, if you haven't seen my other videos on the Kabbalah, I suggest looking at some of those in this playlist first, particularly my videos on the Tree of Life. That'll help you to understand the conception of the universe according to the Kabbalists in the form of the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is depicted here. It's cut off at the bottom of the frame here, which is fine for our purposes because we're only going to be talking about the very top of the tree today. But there are 10 Sephiroth representing, in New Age kind of language, different planes of existence, different dimensions of reality, different vibrational levels of reality, from the very lowest earth plane up to the highest heaven represented by Keter. Each time you get higher, it's a different order of abstraction. Each time you get higher, it's closer to pure divinity. And so by the time you get to Keter, which is circled in red here, you have that which is the absolute, that which is indivisible and whole, represented by the number 1, representing a unity of all things subsumed into this primordial oneness. And it's formless and it's pure being. The God name that is associated with Keter is Ehyeh, which is I am in Hebrew, to hearken back to the verse in Exodus where God describes himself as I am that I am. So basically pure being in itself, pure presence and nothing else, is what is signified by Keter, the very highest Sephirah on the Tree of Life. And it's the very first impulse of creation, because this is the very first point in the universe where we have manifestation into existence from non-existence. So the point in Keter, the point of unified wholeness in Keter, can be compared to the singularity that existed at the beginning of the universe, which then burst forth to create everything in existence when the Big Bang happened. I'm going to be using a lot of analogies to do with science and modern physics to describe some of the concepts today. It's quite interesting, I think, that the kind of language that is being used by the Kabbalists was being used hundreds of years before modern scientific theories came about to explain the greatest mysteries of the universe. But I'll park that for today. And let's just look at what the Kabbalists say about the beginning of the manifest universe, where Keter is really the first impulse of that manifestation, the Big Bang, if you will, of the spiritual reality of the heavens, which then crystallizes further into the physical reality of Malkut, of the material world. So, up here in Keter, we have the beginning of manifestation. But there needs to be a point where the unmanifest moves into the manifest and becomes manifest. And that's really what we're talking about, that unmanifest order of existence, for lack of a better word, is what we're talking about when we're talking about the three veils of negative existence. So when you're thinking about, when you're trying to understand the realm that the three veils exist in, the first thing to kind of grasp is the difference between potentiality and actuality. So the world of Newtonian physics, very much a world of actuality. The world of quantum physics, if you're familiar with modern theories of physics, is very much a world of potentiality, or a realm of potentiality. In simpler terms, if I have a coin and I were to put that coin on its side and then spin the coin around, there would be more or less a 50-50 chance of that coin, when it stops moving, landing heads up or tails up. But so long as the coin is spinning, a coin with heads up or tails up is nothing but a potentiality. It's not an actuality until the coin finally settles in one fixed position. Another useful illustration of potentiality versus actuality is that of a seed. If you think about the seed of a plant, you're talking about something which has the potential of a tree within it. Within the DNA of the seed is all of the encoding that will be able to command the cells of that seed to eventually develop into a tree, in which case, when that happens, the tree can be said to have been manifest. But so long as the seed is only a seed, the tree is unmanifest, but it exists as a potential already because of the genetic programming, if you will, within that seed. So we're dealing with potentials here, but we're dealing with a higher order of abstraction still, because all of those forms of potentiality that I just mentioned, they're potentiality with a kind of structure to them. There's like a kind of a template or a structure of what might become. So it's more, if you're an advanced student of the Kabbalah, you might say that form of potential is like something from the world of Yetzirah, from the world of form, which is waiting to become manifest in the physical material world of Asaya. But I'll do a video on the four worlds another time. But if we're talking about the sort of potentiality that is embodied in this idea, this concept of the Kabbalah, of the negative veils, then we need to go to a higher order of abstraction still. We need to go beyond the world of form altogether to the limitless manifest reality of Keter, and then look at what lies behind that. What is the unmanifest or potential version of that reality of Keter? And so you could unfold out the veils of negative existence from Keter as relating very much to that sphere, as demonstrated here. Okay, so within the unmanifest reality before Keter has come into being, we have the three negative veils. What are the three negative veils? Well, the three veils are Ain, which is the Hebrew for nothingness, Ain Soph, which is roughly speaking the Hebrew for limitlessness, and then Ain Soph Aur, which is the Hebrew for limitless light. The first veil of Ain is represented by these three spheres around the innermost circle surrounding Keter, which is this central circle. And you see the letters of the word Ain in Hebrew, 3 letters in total, around this veil. Ain Soph, the next veil out, 6 letters illustrated by 6 circles around the next layer of the 3 veils. And finally, Ain Soph Aur, a 9-lettered word signified by these 9 circles around the outermost edge of the diagram of the veils of negative existence surrounding the sphere of Keter in the center. So there's a lot to unpack here. Let's begin with the very first of the veils, Ain, nothing. Although this is closest to Keta in the diagram, it can really be considered the furthest away from manifest reality because it is nothingness. So before existence there was nothing, but nothing is not really nothing. The Buddhists understand this well with their concept of the illuminating void. It's also something that Lawrence Krauss talks about when he is putting forth his theories for how something could have come from nothing in the sense of the physical universe. Basically saying that nothing is not really nothing. And basically the way to understand what we think of as nothing is that in the manifest universe, you've got a high level of complexity which has developed out of something very simple. And so the further back in time you go towards the beginning, the simpler the totality of existence should be. And when you go back beyond physical existence, you arrive at something very simple, which is still something, but for all intents and purposes it is nothing because it is utterly without form. It is utterly unconditioned by universal principles such as time and space and causality and energy and matter. And that is really what we're talking about when we're talking about nothing. The most extreme kind of absence of existence that we can think of is nothingness. But it's not necessarily a nothingness as we traditionally understand it. And just as with Krauss's explanation for a highly complex universe coming from a very simple universe, we see that as we move up the tree of life, we get a more abstract kind of realms of existence, but increasingly simple in the sense that there is very little conditioning them, and they're closer to a sort of a oneness and a wholeness and a indivisibility until we arrive at the complete unity and oneness of Keta. And now in the unmanifest reality of the veils of negative existence, we're moving into the realm of the zero. And so we have nothing as the first of the veils. The next of the veils is limitlessness, or the infinite. And so what we have here is it's still a kind of negative language that is being used, because really what is being described here is a lack of boundaries, a lack of limitations in terms of spatial limitations, a lack of limitation in terms of time, because we're talking about eternity, a lack of limitation in terms of the form that things can take, because we're talking about a formless reality. But when you're talking about, say, the limitless rather than nothingness, you're sort of starting to have nothingness evolving into something which is a little bit closer to a manifest reality. And that's what Ain Soph really represents. And finally we arrive at the third veil of negative existence, that of Ain Soph Aur, or Limitless Light. Now, to understand this concept, we really need to understand what light means in the Kabbalah, because it is that limitlessness, but now it's got the extra qualification of being light, which is something that we didn't have in the previous veil. It's a quality that we didn't have in the previous veil, and it takes us just that little step closer to the manifest. But what exactly is this light that is unlimited in the third veil? Well, I think when the Kabbalists and when the ancient mystery schools speak of light in their teachings, in their mysteries, I think really the best parallel is the modern idea of energy, the way that people in New Age circles and new religious movements talk about cosmic energy or divine energy as kind of the metaphor that they use as something that physics has identified as the most fundamental building block, or the most fundamental kind of substance of existence, beyond which you can't get anything more fundamental. You think about if all the matter in the universe annihilated, you'd be left with energy. So we describe the substance of what divinity is in terms of energy. And for the Kabbalists, that kind of most refined, most primeval, most kind of elevated and sublimated form of matter or substance that they could conceive of was light. And so the substance of the divinity got described in terms of light. We see elsewhere in the Kabbalah that the Sephiroth are described in terms of empty vessels, which are then filled with a particular form of light emanating from Keter. So we have a dichotomy being set up between form and content. The vessel is the part of the Sephira's nature that is like the form, but the substantive content that gets poured into that is the light. And so the light is the substance, really, of the Sephirah. And then elsewhere in the Kabbalah, we get told that the light is a reforming light. Once it enters into us, it changes us and makes us a kind of higher being when we integrate the knowledge that light brings us and the comprehension that it brings us. And it's said that by studying the Torah, we receive the light that reforms. So what is it about studying the Torah that would allow us to receive the light? Would it be studying the black and white letter of the law of the Torah and rote learning it and having all of this knowledge accumulated about the contents of that without comprehending the contents? Or would the light of the Torah really come from that more interior comprehension of the contents, a kind of a grasping of the substance of what those words are trying to say? Surely it would be the latter. And so again, we see that the light is the substance of divinity. So really, what's happened with Ain Soph Aur, the limitless light, is that now that limitlessness has taken on a quality and a substance. But it is still unmanifest. It is unmanifest light. Then what happens is somehow these three negative veils enable the transition from unmanifest to manifest to take place. So to kind of draw analogies with modern physics again, we've moved from nothingness to infinite space and infinite time, and then to infinite space and infinite time containing infinite energy. I won't go so far as to say infinite matter, because the crystallization of matter from energy is a kind of thing that is more likely to happen further down on the tree of life when things are already manifest. But I will say energy is a good kind of analogy to draw here. And so having established this infinite, unmanifest potential space, time, and energy, how does that then move into manifestation as Keter, the first point of manifestation, our proverbial Big Bang of the heavens, of the cosmos? Well, the way that the Kabbalists explain it is in terms of a compression. So, to explain a little bit more of what that means, I want to explain how stars are born. So, the way that a star is born is from a nebula. A nebula is a cloud of gas and dust, mostly hydrogen and helium, and it's called a nursery of stars because it is from the cloud of the nebula that stars are born. And the way that the stars are born from the nebulae is that eventually some of the gas that is floating within this gas cloud will start to sort of almost become tangled in on itself. It will start to knot up, and then that creates a kind of gravitational pull that's greater than the rest of the gas cloud, which in turn attracts more gas to it and pulls more gas in. And it makes that ball of gas denser and denser, and this keeps happening. It keeps getting knotted up until finally it becomes so dense that it ignites and becomes a star. A similar thing can be seen with the formation of planets. If you've got a cloud of dust and debris surrounding a newly formed star, little bits of rock will smash together and fuse into bigger rocks, and that will create a greater gravitational pull, which will in turn pull more rocks into it, and then so this snowball effect happens until you have a planet with its own orbit and everything else. And so a similar thing happens with the formation of Keter from the unmanifest world. We sort of see the limitless light compressing itself into a singular point. And when that compression gives rise to that new thing, that singular point of concentrated energy, of concentrated light, then that has become the manifest sphere of Keter. That has become the manifest singularity of Keter. And from there, Keter is able to emanate forth all the rest of the tree of life, all the rest of the cosmos from itself, because it is itself whole and contains all things within it, or contains the potential of all things within it, you might say. And it's really said that the veils of negative existence contain the potential of all the other 10 spheres of the tree of life within them. That is why Ain Soph Aur has 9 letters. This is a representation of the 9 spheres in the tree of life, except for Malkut, the lowest, which is mirrored by Keter. Keter is to the unmanifest world what Malkut is to the manifest. But that's, that might be a bit confusing if you don't know anything about Kabbalah. So again, if you haven't watched my previous videos on the Tree of Life, I highly recommend that you do so. A simpler way to understand it maybe is that all of this negative existence compresses into Keter, and Keter contains the potential of all the other Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. So this is very abstract, as I've said. It's a very unusual way of thinking about the creation of all things. Sometimes it can help to kind of cross-reference things that are saying similar things to understand concepts like this. So I've tried to draw parallels with physics as much as I can, and what is said about the quantum world and what existed at the beginning of the universe and before the universe and so forth. Another thing that you might want to look at to understand what is being described here is the Arupa Loka of the Buddhist traditions. Basically what they call the immaterial realms of existence, pure existence, pure consciousness, pure nothingness, neither existence nor non-existence. That's sort of, there's not a direct parallel in terms of the concepts there and here, but it's talking about the same kind of order of so-called reality, really pre-reality, that this Kabbalistic concept is. It's in the ballpark, you might say. So this is what's being described here. God, the divine, created everything, and the very essence of that divinity remains in its creation, because divinity is infinite and there is nothing that cannot be intersected by it or form a part of it. And even beyond this manifest reality, in the realm of the unmanifest, before anything existed at all, even there is the presence of divinity. And this is really describing what the divine was like before it manifested itself, before it unfolded itself into existence as we know it. So it's a very high order concept. It's a very advanced Kabbalistic concept. I hope that I have simplified it or brought some light to the question in this video, because there's not that much out there that really explains it very well, I found. So yeah, so that was my presentation, my understanding of the veils of negative existence. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to support my work, subscribe to my Odyssey as well to support me there. And thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.